Here is a view seen as a person enters one of the first rooms in the Rhode Island School of Design Museum. A normal person's eye catches the pieces on display and relates them to what they have seen in their everyday life. But, as the person enters the room and begins to look at pieces being displayed, we see a clear example of normal commodities, such as a chair and a desk, appropriated into artwork from various time periods, possibly representing the fads of that time period. Most pieces in this exhibit were created during a time period from 1930 to 1985. From that point on, we see the pieces as not only chunks of wood, but finely crafted, highly valuable works of art. This transformation from wood to chair is what puzzled me most about this exhibit. When does one go from seeing a large pencil to artwork? It is in this transformation that we see appropriation happening, that is, the transformation of an everyday object into art. This exhibit was strategically placed in the center of a large room so as to force the viewer to look down the long corridor and not only view the pieces as a product of human labor, but as a product of human labor appropriated and strategically placed. This process makes the viewer take some time out of the piece that when seen in any other representation would be just a chair or just an oversized pencil. These pictures capture many art pieces that brought me straight back to the example of the 18th century Edwards-Harrison family pier table, which at first glance is a normal table, but when examined further, the consumer sees value added in the material, time period, artist, and history of the table to make it a commodity with a value that far exceeds the material value and labor input of the table. This exhibit by B. Wirtz was one of the most unique, simple, and fascinating pieces to me in the whole museum. I questioned how such a simple commodity that the normal person would throw away or use as a doorstop could be magically appropriated into a highly valuable and amazing work of art. What I'm talking about here is how this first picture of a chunk of concrete building block could be photographed to make it appear as though it were the most precious stone on earth. It is here that the viewer can actually see the steps involved in appropriation. First, the artist takes this object that has little to no value and uses it to take pictures of. With the pictures taken at strategic perspectives and blown up to approximately 2 feet by 3 feet for each frame, it is clear that the value added to this commodity comes from this extra detail and oversized imagery. Another value-added piece in the pictures is that the viewer cannot, without careful examination of the concrete block itself, tell which portion of the block is being represented by the images on the wall in front of it. I believe this was an important aspect given to the pictures by the artist, and I would also say that looking at the exhibit as a whole and not being able to identify one piece of the block in any particular picture makes this an artwork of appropriation. While this exhibit certainly used a commodity to create it, the viewer is led to believe that there is something way more important here, a story behind the block, if you will, possibly told by the sky in the background, suggesting a relation to the harshness of the time shown in the jagged edges of the pictures that makes the viewer wonder if in fact they are supposed to find new meaning in the pictures. Another aspect I began to wonder about while looking at this exhibit is if the artist had chosen not to include the block, would the entire artwork look and feel the same in the viewer's mind, or would it appear different? All of these possibilities from one stone and a couple pictures truly made me understand the word appropriation and how it is used to make a commodity into an artwork, and in some cases an artwork into a commodity. The artworks here are separate from each other, and yet they are related in many ways. There are two different styles of appropriation from commodities being put into use. While thinking about Rockhead, I was questioning whether one could call this a commodity. The question comes because of the use of a rock as the material rather than a true product of man's labor. I do believe this piece becomes a commodity, however, because the hair was not simply grown into the rock, it was very neatly constructed and to represent something. I was pressured into thinking the piece was a rather flat, blank, hairy rock, but when the viewer really starts looking at it, clearly there is something more to it. From that point on, the rock is appropriated to carry a different meaning to the artwork done in 2000 by David Hammonds. Such a simple piece may be seen as two separate parts to some, with one part representing the hair in a typical emo-style fashion, and the other, of course, representing the rock with its small, rounded curves as a nose, eyes, and mouth. My question after viewing this piece was not only what the artist was trying to get out of this, but why had the artist only shaped such small features into the stone, if they were shaped at all? Was Hammonds using such small facial type features to represent something bigger with the piece, Or is it purposefully like that to make the viewer guess? The piece, with whatever form it was supposed to take, was appropriated from two completely different materials into something the average viewer can interpret and make their own conclusion from. In a different artwork, the panel with striding lion from 604 to 564 BC is an appropriation from brick commodities that, until fashioned together in the finished order, represent nothing but a building material. It should be said that this piece could be used as a perfect example of appropriation, in that the lion is seen only as a decoration until placed in its own room at the top of the stairs, as if guarding the space. In this artwork, the individual pieces cannot represent anything by themselves, but together they form a masterpiece.